So this is a review for Mouse Warming, and with me today to discuss this rather charming little cartoon is my good friend S.C. McPeter.
I just came here to play Canasta with you.
And my good friend Luke Perkins will be sending in his thoughts later on as well. But just a few bits of info to get underway. So as mentioned, this is Mouse Warming, released on the 8th of September 1952. It's the 659th in the series, and it's directed by Mr. Sentimental himself, Chuck Jones. This one's interesting because you can find it on the Looney Tunes Mouse Chronicles Blu-ray set, but it's unrestored there. Since then, we've got a HD remaster, and hopefully that'll make its way on disc at some point. Maybe a collector's choice, I don't know. But hopefully it will, because it looks really, really nice here, I think. Now, I can't show you the full thing here due to copyright on YouTube, as always, so I'll just give you the synopsis. So, a family of mice with a teenage daughter moves into a home, aka a mouse hole within a large house. The teenage boy mouse across the way notices the girl and falls in love. Aww. And tries to get her attention. Aww. But Claude Catt is in the way and tries to mess things up for the love-struck teenager. So, yes, it's one of those shorts. So, a few bits of trivia for this one. This is the first Claude Catt short without Hubie and Bertie, and here is a side antagonist. And his look, yet again, has been tweaked. But what do you expect? How many times has Claude Catt's look been tweaked? This is what, the fourth time? Third or fourth? Something like that? The title cards have two interesting things in them. First of all, Lloyd Vaughan's last name is misspelled in the title cards. I guess if you knew what it's supposed to be spelt, you probably wouldn't miss it. But the other interesting thing is there's no Mel Blanc credit, even though you do hear a few of his yells in there, and that is confirmed by Keith Scott in his Cartoon Voices book that, yeah, Mel Blanc does a few of the little yells in here. And what's interesting is there have been shorts in the past where he's just done a few little yells and he got title credit, but here he doesn't. So why? I don't know. But it is what it is. Now, this is the first short to reference the then current teenage generation, the post-war teenage generation. It's like the young guys in their hot rods, that kind of generation. If you watch films like American Graffiti, you know what to expect.
I wonder if the use of the modern teenager, because they could have been young adults in other directors' arms, but I wonder if specifically teenagers in the way that the hot rod is handled was by Mike Maltese's contributions to the cartoon, because later on he would do Real Gone Woody at Lance. And that one really takes the whole teenage edge and does a lot more gags with it. So I wonder if that was saying he was paying more attention to than Jones, because I don't recall many where Jones particularly focused on this sort of the hot rod kids.
It's not the first teenage-themed Warner Brothers short. In the past, you've even got shorts like Catnip College, and that was like the 30s teenage generations. But this is the first of the post-war teenage 1950s type short. We see a reference to a perfume there, Desire number 5. That's clearly a reference to Chanel number 5, which is still made today, and yes, it is still quite expensive. And then you got other ones in the background, which, I don't know what they're supposed to reference. They're probably just silly little things like Gone and Hep, and they're perfumes for some reason. And for a split second, you even see one that's called Swoon, which I thought that was probably the funniest of them all. And you've already mentioned Canasta, and just to let people know, Canasta is actually a card game that is similar to Gin Rummy and other Rummy-type games, and by this point it was becoming very popular in the 1950s. But you were saying, what, Texas Hold'em would be probably the more popular?
If this film was in the 2000s, I would say Texas Hold'em would have been used as the game.
Yeah, so it seems like every decade there's some really popular card game, and Canasta seems to be the game of the 1950s, I suppose. But anyway, that's what it's referring to, in case you were wondering. With this short, I saw it for the first time on the Mouse Chronicles set. And look, even though it was unrestored there, it wasn't like it was awful or anything. I watched it and I enjoyed it, but I did actually forget about it. Now I've rewatched this short in this brand new restoration. It looks really, really good. And it reminded me of Chuck Jones's more sentimental and more cutesy shorts that he started off doing at Warner Brothers. And then he was told to be more funny, his timing sped up, it's improved over the years, and now it seems to be a combination of both. Would you agree with that?
I would definitely agree, especially because at this point he had a very strong collaboration with Mike Maltese on these cartoons where he could really take Mike's ideas and really put them into great sentimentality. I was talking to you about how in my memory the ending, it ended with just the cat running to the distance. Now I forgot that the two mice actually meet up together and it has a nice heart iris out. I actually forgot about that and I was just like, "Aw."
Yeah. Aw. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
one of those shorts, as I
Yeah,
mentioned. It's quite sweet,
I
but
think with Jones, he never really lost his Disney ideas because after Warner's, he kept trying to do things that he thought was Disney, particularly in the way he handled pantomime. But this cartoon uses pantomime very well to its advantage, unlike in the Jones Tom and Jerry's, where it could have been used a little better, especially with playing with the characters. I don't know if Jones would have put the character on his own of the whole hot rod idea. I don't think he would have given them much character other than just boy meets girl. Because that's what Jones did for the most part when he did these sort of love stories.
But thankfully, we got a really nice balance of wonderful
Mm-hmm.
humor, the Chuck Jones humor. It's not the funniest short in the world, but it's got some wonderful bits of humor. But it's got that nice, sweet sentimentality
Mm-hmm.
in there as
Yeah,
well.
I was listening particularly to the music, and there's a great recurring theme when they look at each other and they're in love by Carl Stahl and Mel Frank. At least I think it's original. It has a very nice classical sound to it, and it helps to drive the aw factor a lot.
Let's take a look at the short from the start, because there's actually some really nice
Mm-hmm.
details here. And I guess for starters, Acme have really expanded their operations to the point where not only in the previous short they apparently have a Mars-based operation, but here now they've expanded their operations to be not only removalists, but mouse-sized removalists
At this point, Acme
as
controls
well.
the
So it's a
entire world in these directors' minds.
Exactly, and every director just about uses that
Mm-hmm.
particular brand. It's just a nice little touch, and I like the look of
Mm-hmm.
those removalist mice. They're different enough to not look like stock standard mice that Jones was drawing. But I love the added touches
Mm-hmm.
in the background of the mouse home. I could pause that for a long time. I was having a look at it. You've got the Home Sweet Home cafe matches. You've got human pipe as a fireplace, pocket watch for a clock, hair clip for a sofa. Just all these nice little touches there where it's blink and you miss it because it pans pretty quickly. But when you're able to pause it, you can appreciate these details.
Yeah, I really like it when directors and artists do like mouse size things where they use real human objects to give mice houses. It's a really nice touch.
Exactly, and I like how once we see the teenage boy mouse, how he has that car, and apparently it can run on. You guys say gasoline, we say petrol, but same thing. It runs on the same kind of fuel. It's like, oh, all right. So yeah, even in the
Mm-hmm.
sentimental parts where he notices the girl, all that wonderful poses, he knows how to hold a pose for just long enough. Where he's, oh, there's a girl, it's a pose, turns around, and then he's absolutely smitten.
I think this is an early example of Jones using his cute eyes, not necessarily for a gag, but for genuine sentimental reasons. I don't think it necessarily works 100% that way, but I think here it actually does because it wasn't as overused as it would be a little later.
And we see Claude, and it starts off with the whole thing where it's clearly this mouse is always trying to get the food from the fridge, and Claude's out to stop him. That's clearly an established relationship there. And we got this weird gag that's akin to some of the Roadrunner gags, where some of the laws of physics seem to be broken. Claude's looking on, and this boy mouse wants to enter this house. So Claude puts the door in his mouth, and the boy mouse goes in, who doesn't have a name, by the way, so I'm just going to have to call him Boy Mouse. But then you hear these sound effects, and we just got this hold on this particular shot where the sound effects just do their work, and that's it. But it's like that there's a house already inside Claude's body, which is kind of weird, but I guess it's a great way to save money and just using sound effects.
This is a nice little blackout gag cartoon, especially since it has a different setup than Roadrunner cartoons, which means that there are also different gags being exercised here.
We then see the main bit of this short where Claude's like, you know what, I see what's happening here. I'm going to have to intervene in a different way. So he's quite a clever cat here. He writes a letter pretending that it's from the girl Mouse. And I like the added touch where instead of 16 years, it's 16 months.
I
Humans,
think in
forgot
actual mice years, that's something to the equivalent of 50 years old.
And you got the question mark next to yours, and Claude's got really nice handwriting, I gotta say. Bravo,
Yeah.
Claude. He's clearly got high marks for handwriting in school. But it's a great idea. Then Claude takes a page out of Sylvester's book where he has the hand puppet and he's trying to mess with this boy mouse in a nice little gag. And I love seeing how this mouse is happy rescuing the puppet, but then once he realizes it's a puppet, he's just sad in his bed and such. That scene really does show the despair of teenage heartbreak, I gotta say. That was very well animated and directed there.
I like that, again, it expands on the note. They know it's a good gag and they can do it multiple times and they build on it, because then we go on to this gag where then he does it to the father and then sets him up to actually go there. And then it doesn't exactly play out how Claude hopes.
Exactly. And a lot of that also it just shows that Claude seems to be dealing with things a lot better than the Coyote does, because Coyote seems to try one idea, and even if it's very close and catching to Roadrunner, he would never use that particular idea again, whereas here Claude's, you know what, there is something to this idea, so I'm going to try it again, but take a different approach, and sure enough, it seems to have worked. And we got the beautiful timing where you got the whole border sign put up. The boy mouse, you know what, I'm going to leave this house and I'm going to try and live with my dream girl. And he goes in, the boy mouse runs out, clearly because the father's not in my house. Get out, because of the message. And then you think Claude has won, but then he gets shot at. And that timing of that gunshot is chef's kiss.
Yeah, and of course, our boy mice figures out what's happened, and he probably, I hope, explains to the father what the hell's been going on. Because then he writes his own letter and sets up the cat, which shows that some people never learn. And then we get that, what my favorite part of the whole short is, besides just the whole aspect, is Ken Harris's animation of Claude setting up the game of Canasta with the dog, and then the dog just preparing to beat the crap out of him.
Oh, that scene is beautiful. In fact, I would probably have scored this short lower if it wasn't for the end scene there. It was like a perfect little punchline to the whole short. And just, this cat seems to have this hidden desire that he actually really does want to be friends with this dog, but the dog just hates Claude for whatever reason, right? And just the expressions on this dog's face, first it's like half asleep, what? And disbelief, and then he's just confused. And then once he realizes what's going on, just the sheer anger in his face.
I like the extent that Claude actually goes to set up this game. He takes no stops. He brings the game, he gets the table, he even gets some food and drink. He brings some nice lemonade over.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess Claude really does want to be friends with this dog, but yeah, sure enough, it doesn't quite end for him, and we get this nice little silhouette of him going off into the night. I don't know why he doesn't go home, but maybe he just has to rethink his life. I don't know, but anyway... And we end in a 3, 2, 1. Aww.
Yeah, they get the fridge and each other. And we get the nice little heart iris out that was sometimes used. Then again, I don't think any iris out in a cartoon can top a hick, a slick, and a chick.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But this is a nice ending.
Great score, as in Stalin's score. I think Stalin was, again, at his peak. He kept getting better and better in some ways. And... he never really did a bad score at Warner's, honestly. And again, this is one of those ones that I really like, because again, he does a nice little romance touch whenever they're looking at each other and thinking of each other. Aww.
Yeah, exactly. So he does really great job here. And now my good friend Luke Perkins wanted to add his thoughts on this short. He really loves this one and has a few things to say. So take it away, Luke.
Mousewarming, one of my favorite Chuck Jones cartoons ever. All right. If you couldn't tell from how I'm feeling right now when I'm starting with this, I really adore this one, and I'll get to why in a moment. So, when it comes to Chuck Jones and his unit in this era, what pops up in your mind? Is it the snappy and smartly written dialogue, usually courtesy of Michael Maltese? Is it the expertly crafted animation that's filled with sharp timing and pitch-perfect expressions? Well, a lot of those traits are fantastic, but I think what usually gets overlooked is one thing that some of his one-offs, including this one, has. Well done pantomime. To be brief, pantomime is a form of storytelling where the actions of a character, or characters, is performed without any dialogue and relies on the actions, emotions, gestures, and personality of a character to get its point across. Pantomime is used in a lot of ways. Sometimes it's for a specific character, like Dopey, a character who doesn't have much dialogue. And other times, it's for gags that could work when told visually and not without words, like that one scene with Pluto and the Flypaper from Playful Pluto. But Chuck Jones, on the other hand, has this short be a full-on silent short, where the whole story is told through visuals and without dialogue. To specify why it works so well here and why Chuck was a master at this sort of thing, I'm going to analyze the first 2 minutes of the cartoon. So, in the beginning of the cartoon, a mouse family moves into a new mouse hole. After they move in, we see the family's daughter looking at a window from outside the house, and then hearing something from inside the house, which happens to be a boy mouse, and they fall in love at first sight. As mice usually do. The boy mouse tries to go there with a small cup of sugar, but is stopped by the cat Claude, and we're given a very good indication that this happens a lot. Getting back to the pantomime thing, one of the reasons why the beginning is so well done for me is because compared to other cartoons that does use pantomime to tell its story, the advantage this one has is that because the personalities and characters are so well defined visually and without dialogue, the characterizations have been well established without needing pointless exposition or dialogue. Because someone narrating this or giving characters voices when everything is so well established visually would come off as pointless. Even through facial expressions, you can tell what they were feeling without the pointless exposition too. Compare it to something like another Chuck Jones short, Two's a Crowd, where animals don't really speak in that one because their personalities are very well defined. But we do have dialogue from the humans in the beginning and end of the short, and then hijinks go from there. But that's just really an example, and I don't mind it much there. However, Mouse Warming doesn't have dialogue, and I feel like it works better without it. Hell, the only time dialogue is used in this is not even said dialogue. It's done through letters that Claude writes in disguise of the other characters so he could mislead the mice and eat them. And the letter gag is done 3 times throughout the short. First, Claude writes the first letter in disguise of the girl mouse after he sees the 2 mice woefully looking at each other from a distance. He writes the letter and sends it to the boy mouse to meet at the trash can. And when we get there, Claude hides behind a trash can and uses his hand to disguise himself as the girl so that he could trap the boy mouse and eat him. But of course he fails. Second time, Claude writes the letter in disguise of the boy mouse next door and sends it to the mouse girl's family to intimidate them, which is basically a I'm moving in sort of letter. It leads to the father mouse attacking the boy mouse with a gun, who mistakes the house for needing a boarder, so Claude could attempt to eat him, but Claude fails again. And then you have the final time, where there's a twist. The boy mouse has caught wind of what's going on, and he writes a letter to Claude in disguise of a bulldog named Butcher that lives next to the house. He writes the letter as basically letting chums be chums and being friends, and Claude believes it, until he comes in and is beaten the crap out of instantly by the bulldog, who clearly hates his company, especially when he's sleeping. Now, what I just went through with here was an example of a writing principle called the Rule of 3. It suggests how 3 entities like events or characters could be more humorous and effective than more or less. 3 wishes, for example. But the rule of 3 can also be used in comedy, in which is called a comedic triple, in which 2 entities are very normal and expected, which builds up to the third and final one being the punchline to create an effective surprise to the audience. Like, the big bad wolf can blow down a house of straw in the house of sticks, yet can't blow down the house of bricks. In the case of this short, it's the 3 letters. And this principle is used a lot in classic cartoons of this era as well. For example, a Bob Clampett cartoon, Farm Frolics, yes, we're going pretty far back, a narrator instructs the horse to do 3 things: a trot, a gallop, and a canter. He does a trot and gallop, but instead of doing a canter, he impersonates Eddie Cantor, a singer from the 30s and 40s. Or, If you want to go even further with that principle, I like to bring an example from a live-action comedy that came out a year after this cartoon. How to Marry a Millionaire, directed by Gene Neglesko. Did I say his name right? This film stars Marilyn Monroe as Pola, Lauren Bacall as Shotzi, and Betty Grable as Loco. In one sequence, each of the three protagonists has a dream sequence. Both Shotzi and Pola dream about being wealthy and rich and money, etc. and etc. And then you get to Loco, who dreams about eating a sandwich. Don't we all? So that's how the rule of three or comedic triple works. Now let's get back to the cartoon itself. One detail I find interesting is that when we're introduced to the boy mouse, he's riding a motorized hot rod, which helps imply that the short takes place in the 50s, in contrast to the wind-up car the other mouse family uses, and even the wind-up moving fan. But it isn't the contrast that I find interesting. It's also the fact that the boy mouse parks it in its toy box, which implies that this house includes a human family, including a son that probably plays with the toy, which is why Claude Catt is there, and to some extent, butchered the bulldog. There's also this really adorable ending shot of the cartoon where the boy mouse and the girl mouse are finally together, and they drink a soda from a fridge. It's like a Norman Rockwell tribute, but with mice. It feels like an iconic shot you've seen before that kind of describes a 50s aesthetic, and a picture that you would see on Instagram a few times if you were a classic cartoon fan. And then we have a nice heart-shaped iris out to wrap up the short as well. I feel like I went over just enough on why I adore this short a lot. I could probably talk more, but I think I should wrap this up right now. I don't use this word very often, but if you want peak Chuck Jones and his unit outside of the usual iconic shorts like the Hunting Season Trilogy, Feed the Kitty, and others, this is one I usually recommend when it comes to stuff outside of his Bugs Bunny and typical Star shorts. The best part is, there are still some more amazing Chuck masterpieces to come, including one that comes out the year after this one, and that one is one of my favorite shorts by Chuck, so I cannot wait to get to that one. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. I can't really think of a way to end this. That's all. Bye.
I gotta say, this is a nice, charming little short about young love, and it's got enough gags in it that prevent it from being too schmaltzy. It's got the perfect balance and wonderful animation with Chuck Jones's team at its absolute peak, and you got some wonderful writing. And I would give this one probably 8.5 out of 10, and that's more because it's not really go too short, but honestly, it's a wonderful one that everyone should definitely check out, and hopefully this restored version will be on disc at some point.
I would also agree about 8.5 because, again, it is a very good short, but it's a little unusual for the time, especially because Jones wasn't really getting into this cutesy thing until later, and this is sort of the beginning of it, but here it does work very, very well, and he does a lot of great gags in it, unlike in later examples.
Yeah, exactly. But it's definitely a great one, but that'll do it for this review. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and until next time, take care.
That's all, folks.